everyone, welcome back to JB's Budget Collecting. In another episode of the Indie Show, we are once again talking a little Rachel Rising with my friend, the Unruly Simeon. What is going on, my man? Oh, look at you, the
only way to fly.
The Omni, you got the big paperback cover. So, all right. So, yes, we are talking Volume 3, Cemetery Song, and I'm going to let you go first of your impression of this volume and kind of how it fits in what we've heard, what we've read so far, what you think, what you thought of this volume on the reread. What'd you think, my man?
All right. So immediately after the last episode, I read like the next 8 issues. I read a couple ahead of where we're at now. And then I sat down and read it again this afternoon, but mainly looking at the art.
Right.
And it's, you know, I love the story, I love the characters, but his art, even though it looks so simple and clean, it's really good. He draws women very well, and I love how in most of the panels, there's a real life background.
Right.
He does very little, you know, solid color, usually white or black, because it's a black and white comic background. There's always different perspectives. I love him as an artist.
Okay.
But like we were just discussing Fear Agent and its serialized cliffhanger episode, he sure loves to put the gals in a pickle at the end of each arc.
All right. So we're going to get right into like my thoughts on this right off the bat, which is the first volume I enjoyed. I wasn't 100% hooked. I was like, okay, like this has got potential. I'm enjoying it. I'm definitely going to keep reading, but I'm not like, I'm in. Second volume, I thought was fantastic. It moved the story. I thought it was just really, really well done. But I even mentioned then, I was like, well, if we're just going to like do this kill Jedith every volume, we're going to have problems. I found this volume extremely frustrating. From the end, that just seems to be like what we're going to do for the end every time, apparently. Like, and I don't, but the other thing is, I don't feel like the story really moved much this volume. Like, and it just kind of circled around, and I don't, and we'll get into it, but I don't like the portrayal of the character that causes the end to have the same ending that we've had every time. Like, I feel like there's an inconsistency there that we'll get into. But yeah, I just felt like this volume didn't really move the story as much as I had hoped. I felt like it just kind of like we ended up sort of where we were at the end of the last volume, with characters that we know aren't actually dead again. Like, and I don't feel like there was a ton of progress in terms of actual things happening with the story. What do you think? Like, I'm curious, as you obviously you know further ahead, what do you think of my feelings about this volume? How does that, like, do you completely disagree? Do you think that you see where I'm coming from? What do you think about that? I'm curious.
I was actually honestly thinking about it as you were saying it, and I can see your point. But
I haven't read ahead, so there may be stuff here that's actually more important than I think, too. So
I don't think the next volume is going to disappoint you at all.
Okay.
As far as story progression. But see, man, I'm one of those guys. I've always been a big reader, and you know, I hear people, other readers, not occasionally, but quite often say, I don't have time to read that 1,200-page behemoth. If it's something I like, I want more of it.
Right.
I love that 1,200-page behemoth.
And
this is quite finite, you know. Yeah. I mean,
right, and maybe that to me, see, that is ultimately more frustrating than the 1,200-page behemoth. Because a lot of times, if that's just the way the story's being told, that we're going to get all, okay, go back outside. Good grief. You wanted in here. Nothing was happening. that's ultimately the way the story's being told. But I feel like if you're telling a 9-volume story, a 45 issue or 50 issue or whatever it ultimately is, I don't know. I just felt like there wasn't like that I would expect in something that's finite like that, at least some sort of steady progression with that. And maybe, and there is, I guess there is progression, but it felt a lot like we ended up, other than a little bit of the stuff with Lilith, I felt like all of this is stuff that we kind of already knew that we got in this volume. I guess is where I'm at on this, and let's start digging into it, and like we can maybe we'll change my mind as we talk through it. But yeah, I just felt like there was not that we spent 6 issues and we didn't really accomplish anything. It's 6 issues of a 50 issue series, and it's like, what did we accomplish? It's kind of where I felt at the end. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm serious. When you were, I can see exactly what you're saying when you were saying that.
Yeah.
But we got to develop characters, and that's always cool.
And we did get some more in depth, particularly with. We got a little bit of Mary Scott. We got a little bit of gosh dang it. What's the other one?
Yeah,
the other 2 witches.
I can't remember her name.
I can't either off the top of my head now. I mean, they say it a little bit. Mary Scott. Dang it. Where's it at? They say her name. And in this whole scene, Hannah. Or no, yeah. Yeah, Hannah and Mary Scott. We got a little bit more of them. We definitely got a little bit of Lilith development for sure. I felt like the Zoe stuff, again, we'll dig into this individually as we go through it. I felt like the Zoe stuff and the priest was like, she should have, if she has, she should have already figured out. He's not trying to hide who actually is it. That is who he is in any way, shape, or form. And I feel like she's smart enough to have already figured that out, although maybe not, because she apparently hasn't. And I don't know. And then the stuff with the rat seemed a little random. And like, it just, I don't know. This volume did not work for me as well as the first 2 did. So we'll see where it goes from there. But it opens up with Rachel, again, kind of how the original volume 1 opens up, with her showering off all the mud and dirt from being buried. And we see that the animals, like the cat, is still running from her. We see later the dog kind of cowers when she's around. So she basically goes through this whole thing. We get this whole sequence, almost deja vu, of being buried alive again, and how she comes out of that. And then it's followed by Earl and the creepy doctor with Jet. And
the doctor just keeps getting weirder.
I mean, could he be any creepier? Just like, it's just like his whole.
And not only that, but, and this is something that was a stray thought the last time I read it, but I'm starting to think, is the doctor gone through reincarnation and is aware of it?
I don't know. Or is he just crazy? Like, and it just happens that his crazy kind of matches some of the stuff that's going on. Like, I
love Earl. Earl is a genuine good soul.
Yeah.
And every story needs at least one of those.
And so far, he's the only one we've really seen that's truly, I mean, we haven't seen, like, Rachel and Jed haven't come across as, like, messed up yet, but I have the feel, like, too messed up. But yeah, Earl is clearly, like, the antithesis of what most of the people that we're meeting in here, for sure. And, but this whole first issue is really systematic of why I was a little frustrated with this volume, because it's Rachel coming out of being buried alive again and cleaning up and like trying to find herself and how long she's been gone, and Jet being resuscitated by Earl and she's dead and they're like trying to figure it out, and it just and like and then we got the only thing we got that was kind of new was the whole thing with them messing with the water treatment thing. And maybe there's more payoff there, but I didn't feel like there was. Like, clearly she's doing some kind of weird magic and like it causes us to later get the rats, but it's like I'm not sure what they were ultimately trying to accomplish there. And so maybe there's more to that than what we've seen so far, other than just make it where there's no water for people, I guess. But it just the whole thing was, I don't know. Hey, Kenneth, GT Key is back. What is going on? So what did you, I mean, was there anything in this issue that stood out to you that you enjoyed or maybe frustrated you? What did you think of this first issue?
No. I'm right there with you. We've covered it. It's Earl is a rock. Dr. Siemens is just unbelievably weird, and with his creepy little half smile.
Yeah.
Well, we could bring her back to my house.
Yeah, just like no, I think we're good. Like Earl's like, no, I'll take her to Rachel. But yeah, like his like you said that he does ladies well, he does creepy well. And his art, like,
Oh yeah, and if you ever read God, what's the name of it? It's the next series, the next to last series he just did with that features Zoe. I can't think of the name of it, but it's a really good story. She comes across quite a few creeps, and he just draws them that way. It's like the hunter we're gonna encounter later.
Yeah. Okay, so and then the second issue is it's a lot about them trying to figure out how to wake Jet up. And then we find now the one thing that I felt was like out of place here that confused the heck out of me is like Mary Scott is apparently goes back to the house that that the real Mary Scott lived in, that Natalie, and the guy that she killed in the first episode that was her fiance or whatever. Well, he killed her and then Zoe killed him, I guess I should say. And they're like, his brother and his wife are banging on the door and are speaking of kind of a creep, but like, so does she still have the original person in there? Like, I'm a little confused about how this works. Like, who's like, because Rachel seems to be, and they talk about it later, Rachel seems to be like just mostly the person that was there before. And these others, until this moment, have seemed to be like the person from the past, reincarnated in this body. Like, I don't know. What do you think of that? What did you think of that scene?
Yeah, it does seem kind of superfluous, but I think they do have memories. They're I don't know. I'm not big on reincarnation, but if it does exist, I would imagine, and you become conscious in this life of your past lives, that it's all the same person,
Right.
So it wouldn't be conflicting in your own head, but it can be. I don't know. It's just the whole concept's weird to me.
So, yeah, it was I just found it strange because she had been the one that seemed to be taking the most joy in all the destruction they were doing. And then, as we see later, and yet here we see her have actual emotion about like these people that are at her door who don't really seem all that nice, but I assume more about the fiance that murdered her under the influence of Lilith, obviously. But so it was just an interesting aside that I wasn't sure where they're going with that for sure. So
Well, see, I'm not, having read a lot of his stuff. I think I've read all of his stuff. If I haven't, I don't. It's something I'm not aware of. But at any rate, he likes these little asides, just showing emotion and introducing characters that might be prominent for a page or two that you never see again. He does that all the time.
Okay. And then I assume the next couple pages is actually Rachel back in the day, like the pre-incarnated Rachel. So we see her plant these trees and then bury this box. And then we see current day Rachel in front of, I assume, the trees now 300 years later. I don't know what trees those are. And I didn't think this was West Coast sequoias, but like there should be some really old trees at this point. But
and she realizes the box is in the middle of the road.
Yeah. So does she have that true? Is that really her remembering, or in that moment, or not?
Yeah. That's really her knowing she needs the box.
Okay, so she does actually, because I wasn't 100% clear if this was a true memory she was having or if it was not, and so because it's not super clear, and then we see Zoe again, and somehow foster care has found her again. Like these people you would think at this point they'd just be like, maybe we should just let that girl be. You know?
Well, a certain percentage of the homeless are children.
Yes. I mean, I don't know. He even goes through it like they died and then this passed and then these other people. It's like, dude, maybe she's not a good fit.
It's like Angela Lansbury's character in Murder, She Wrote. I wouldn't invite that bitch anywhere.
Yeah. Like, bad things are going to happen. So she runs away again. She sees Rachel, is going to talk to her, but then she sees, is it Mary Scott again? Yeah. So we get another scene with Mary Scott, and Mary Scott, like, scares Zoe away, which is interesting. Like, I don't know exactly for sure what's going on there, but and then we get this conversation between her and Rachel, basically because Rachel doesn't remember. It's like, either remember and help us or get out of the way, which again, I'm still not 100% sure. Like, I understand what Lilith is trying to accomplish, or what any of them are trying to accomplish. I guess kill everybody, but they just seem to be going about it in a very roundabout way. I don't know. Like,
well, Lilith is incredibly old.
Yeah.
And she has a plan, but her powers are limited.
Yeah.
I think Lilith is doing the best she can do. Limited on a grand scale. Now, to me or you, the shit she can pull off is pretty freaking amazing.
Right. So then, of course, we see Zoe's lost again, and of course, she's immediately found by. And now I'm forgetting what he calls himself. Like when he's not high, he's
Malice.
Malice, yes, Malice is in the form of a priest, which I get how he fools her for a little bit. So he takes her in, and we jump back finally. 3 issues into this volume, Jet wakes up again. It's like, and and I feel bad for poor sweet Earl. He's been sitting there holding her hand, like trying to get her to wake up, and she wakes up, and then she's instantly like all accusatory, like, why am I naked? Why is it this? It's like, well,
because I took you from the morgue.
Yeah, it's like you were brought to the morgue. But he doesn't know how to express himself in a way that he just can't, because he's talking quick and he doesn't he doesn't know how to talk quick for sure. But their interaction is, I mean, he's just trying to be sweet, and then like just everyone around him is kind of awful. And then we see Rachel go to the graveyard, and she's like, the statue's crying blood, it appears like, and that doesn't seem to bother her other than that the snow is not gathering on it. But what is she trying to do? Like, I don't know, this whole, like, this is maybe where my frustration is, because some of this just doesn't make sense to me yet, and maybe it will, but like, why she's trying to like talk to her mother, like her mother's corpse, like, what was she trying to accomplish? What did she think her mother knew that, like, I don't know, maybe I realize you don't want to like spoil things, but it just seemed this whole thing just seemed like there was no lead up to why she felt like she needed to go to her mother's grave and why she does this.
I think she just went to, and that's something else I've never been big on, is communing with a loved one in a boneyard.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, and God bless people that take comfort from it. It's not my thing, but I think she was just there to do that, and this impulse overwhelmed her.
Okay.
But what's interesting is, did you notice the date her mom died?
I did not. 2001. Oh, September 11th, 2001. Okay.
I don't know what, if anything, that has to do with the plot, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And then whatever she finds out, she damn sure doesn't like.
No, she does not. So yeah, she like screams and kind of runs away from that, and
she pulls a reverse Kill Bill.
Yeah, she does pull the reverse Kill Bill. And then we get this whole sequence with the rats. And I'll be honest, the only thing out of this whole thing that makes the rat sequence worthwhile for me is Zoe with the bats. It's like, but
yeah, me too. But there's also one great panel here.
Oh yeah, where they're go. Yeah, when they're running from the rats. Yeah. Yeah, when she tells him there's a rat in the bathroom and he opens the door and they're all in there, and then yeah, she's like, yeah, that panel is, those two panels are the only, but and they arrest the guy or whatever, but like, again, I'm just not sure what they're trying to accomplish with the rats. Like,
it's within Lila's scope of power.
Yeah, I guess. And they're, and we see everybody buying. And the other thing is, I do feel like part of it is maybe because Lilith doesn't truly understand. Like, I'm wondering if she hasn't been awake in this body that long, or she doesn't truly understand the current world. Because we see they make a mistake where they're caught on the security cameras at the plant, and we see that like they won't have any water, and we see they're just all drinking bottled water within like 5 minutes of this happening. So it's kind of like, and I get not having running water after a while, it's not going to work, but like there's limit, like her effect of what she's doing with some of this is not being offset just by current technology that people have gotten to, that she doesn't have a full understanding. So I do wonder about that.
Well, I think she's part of her thing is to creep the town out.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Okay.
I mean, she hates, as we discover pretty soon, she hates all of creation at this point. She's batshit insane about it.
Yeah.
So I think she's kind of just getting off on the idea of people freaking out about rats.
Yeah. So the follow-up to this sequence is Jed and Rachel at Johnny and Carol's. And I suppose we get a little bit of the Carol's Catholic, that sets up some of the end. I just don't feel like Carol's reaction to the conversations and stuff as we go through this, and we can talk about it some more. I don't feel like he does a good job of setting up what she does. Or maybe I just didn't, maybe I need to reread it. I didn't see, other than to say she's Catholic, so therefore religious, like, I didn't feel like he did a good job setting up where that goes. What did you think about that aspect? I realize we're kind of skipping to the end, but I feel like that whole sequence kind of runs together in terms of, they're at the house and then they're showing them then later they're showing them the painting, and then there's a conversation between her and Jet, and and Johnny's trying to, is a person of science, and she's trying to figure it out. And I do love, talking about science is in some ways sort of a religion. They talk about, science is sort of a religion in its own way, but yes and no. As a scientist, I get where they're coming from. It is a little bit of belief and figuring it out, but you're basing it on, information. But what do you think about how they set up the end of this with Carol in terms of as a character?
I didn't think about it. It was just I really don't remember what I thought the first time I read it, and this time around when I just reread it tonight, I was mainly thinking about how you were going to be fucking frustrated that Jet and Rachel are dead yet again.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of abrupt and weird. And for the life of me, I haven't finished it again. For the life of me, I can't remember if or how that does get resolved.
Yeah. So, yeah, it just felt like he sets her up as, obviously, as a religious person, a person of faith, but he doesn't set her up as being like, I feel like you have to be pretty extreme in your faith, like over the top, to take the action that she does. So basically, and she doesn't come across as a fanatic.
No, because there's that scene where she's talking to Jet and she says, "Who am I to judge? I leave that to God."
Yeah.
He told me to do one thing while I'm here, love people, so that's what I try to do.
Right. So, like, I don't feel like he sets up her action unless there's something that we find out that she's not actually responsible.
Which listen, I'm serious. I really don't remember. That might very well be the case.
Because I feel like there's no setup to Earl coming in and them not answering and them all being, I realize we're jumping to the end of this volume, them all being dead around the table and Carol's note. I feel like there's no setup to that at all. Like, the setup is that she's the opposite, that she's very, like, yes, she's a person of faith, but she's a person of faith who has an understanding of the world around her that, like, she doesn't take everything literally. Like, she, and like you said, she has that whole conversation about, who am I to judge? So it just felt very weird the way that plays out. Okay, the other thing that kind of goes through these last few issues, I realized because I jumped and took scenes from the last 3 or 4 issues here with them, and we'll work through a lot of it, but from 16, 17, and 18 is Zoe is at the church with Malice in the form of a priest, and he drops hints about the knife, and basically, we get this whole sequence where he sets her up to sacrifice a goat, and we see her basically become possessed while she's doing it. And then he kills the other priest that's at the thing, but if Zoe, from the final sequence here of him and Zoe, again, I'm just kind of jumping through the storyline as opposed, because we kind of have 3 storylines that kind of go through these last 3 issues. Him basically talking to her about using her skills, and he takes her to this guy he just claims is a bad guy. Like, he has tied up in the basement. And he's sort of trying to get her, because he wants, obviously, he said basically in the last volume what his goal was for her to be basically bring forth his son, his sixth generation or whatever, but he's trying to make her into a monster to make her more receptive to doing that.
And she's gone through 6 decades of being possessed by him and just killing people willy-nilly.
Right.
So she's got a lot to process up here now that she's not possessed anymore.
Yeah.
And then you've got Lilith, who jerked her around a little bit here and there.
Right.
I mean, this is a poor 60-year-old little girl.
Yeah, 60-year-old, 10-year-old. It's like, so I don't know. This one was, I feel like, and I sort of get it because she's definitely messed up, but she, like, even when he brings her in and shows her what he's doing, like, I feel like she should figure out what he's doing. Like, what we've seen, and maybe she just does, and just like, I'm just going with it in this moment. It's a moment of weakness, but like, I feel like it's not super clear, but I feel like the Zoe that we've met through these volumes, being the 60-year-old, 10-year-old, is smart enough after what happened with Lilith and him in the forest, and then him and her in the hospital, to realize very quickly that that's who this is. Like, because he's not exactly like being subtle in any way, shape, or form here.
I think Malice is, if he's as much as he's capable of fondness, he's fond of Zoe. I mean, he lived inside her for a long time, but
right.
I think he finds her amusing.
Yeah.
As well as being the vessel for the Antichrist, or however you choose to describe it.
Yeah. And I love, and she's like, and she's like, what was my great grandfather's record? He's like, I'll tell you when. You're there. But like, yeah, the grin on his face when she goes after the guy is just like, yeah, pure evil, which is what he is. So, the other big kind of sequence in these last 3 issues is Lilith, Mary Scott, and Hannah going out to basically where they were burned, out in the woods, like where the burnings took place. And Lilith setting herself ablaze, basically, to like renew, which I don't quite... Is she sort of like a phoenix? I'm not sure I understand exactly what's going on there, but yeah. She basically sets herself ablaze, turns to ash, and then returns.
What I love about that whole sequence is when she first starts to burn herself, she's talking about, he left me to watch humanity to rise, to fall, to envy the blessed dead. But I do not. I do not envy them.
Yeah.
But then when she sees my Malai, or however you pronounce that, please take me, please take me.
Well, yeah, she's lying through her teeth. Like, she's like, is she going through the ceremony where she burns herself to renew herself? Yeah, he left me here to suffer. He left me here to watch them multiply corpse. He left me because I did not please him, because I ate from the tree of life. So he left me in the garden to watch creation burn. And she's like, he left me to watch humanity rise and fall and envy the blessed. I do not envy them. And she goes on. She's like, I have to watch her son's war. Am I not blessed? She's talking about how she's glad that the rest of these horrible people aren't from her, that they're from, Eve, and that she's not jealous, and I am blessed enough. And she's like, I can raise the dead or level a town. I am not the blessed one. Am I not blessed enough for you? You know, she's sort of selling herself the lie that she lives in terms of trying to continue to keep going. Hey, Bronze Page, what's going on? Some life with two YouTubers. I don't know. No. So, oh, she's nuts, Sharon. She's, you know.
Well, you would be too if you'd been alive through all of creation.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, she's the first woman before Eve. We're talking about Lilith here. So
the one who would not bend her knee to Adam.
Yeah.
And that's why he rejected her.
Right.
And then Eve was made. The one who was not made from Adam's flesh was made separately.
Yes.
The legend of Lilith is pretty interesting.
It is, for sure. So, it's like, who says I haven't? There you go. So then we get a conversation to get to know Mary Scott and Hannah a little bit. And there's clear one of these two is a little nutso, and the other one's a little bit more, I don't know, maybe not less nuts, but subdued. As we get these two hunters stumble across them in the woods, you know, in their robes, and of course one of them is a horrible person, and the other one just hangs out with the wrong person. But so Mary Scott feeds them to her wolves, but her, like, he draws crazy. You talk about his art, but he draws crazy really, really well.
Those are perfect panels.
I know, like, her reaction to the wolves is just like, yeah, she's laying on her back laughing and then making those faces, and, you know, and then has to walk up and taunt the guy before he dies. And, you know, yeah, Mary Scott is a little bit, whatever we think about how crazy Lilith is, I think Mary Scott might be further gone. So,
well, her brother got eaten by wolves. What are you going to do?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, Sharon, what are you doing? All being young. You are definitely young and way too kind. Thank you so much for that. That is ridiculous, but you're amazing. So, you know, but that also earns you a... Yes! Did you see that? You see how they reacted in the chat? They loved it. Take that, Bear Island. Yeah. There's your Bear Island.
Never gets old.
So, but yeah, we see after Mary Scott kills the two random guys, we see Lilith wake up, and then we see the truth. Because death, Maimala, or however they pronounce it, has come for these two guys, and we definitely see that they were very different lives, because the one guy gets sent off, and the other guy she takes on with her, and but we see Lilith trying to get her attention, and she's just like, we even see her like look and give her kind of half a grin, like, oh, it's you again, huh? And yes, take that back. So Maimala is, you know, is the angel of death. She can't talk to Lilith because she can't take Lilith. But yeah, she kind of taunts her, you know, when she looks over the guy's shoulder. She's kind of like, oh yeah, sucks to be you, Lilith. You don't get you anymore. It's okay, come get you. But we see she has after that encounter, she has a very different tone to what she was when she was performing the rebirth ceremony or whatever she was doing, you know, where she's talking about how blessed she was and how lucky she was, you know, how she was the lucky one. And then it's, you know, and that she didn't envy the blessed dead, but we see none of that's true. Like, she's like, he's punishing me for hating her. He's punishing me, leaving me here forever with the remains of her filthy seed. And she's like, we're going to kill every last one of them and send them back to her in mass, starting with this town. And so we see again what Lil's true motivation is she's just been Cece's being with the children of the woman that replaced her, that she was supposedly not as good as, has been her torture, for her hell, for she's been walking, for since the beginning of creation, for sure. So, any thoughts on that? Like the end of that sequence with her and death. What did you think about that?
It's just yet another revelation of how crazy Lilith is and how twisted. Like, even before her family, before her and all the other young ladies of the town were murdered, she wasn't big on mankind, and she was crazy even then.
Right. And I get the impression that she's probably always been, to a certain degree, this way. I don't think the town getting burned by the town was just another. Maybe it was the straw that broke. It was just another thing that's happened to her in all her long life that you may finally like. No, I'm done with these people. I do find it interesting to see, but we see her vulnerable through this for kind of the first time when she sees death in a way that we hadn't seen before. Because she's basically put on a front the whole time, every time we've seen her, for sure. Okay. With that, are there anything else
point out in this
volume?
The whole sequence with the detective and the poor schlub that worked at the waterworks.
Right.
Notice the detective. Look at every panel he's in. He's the least fleshed out facially of any of the characters we've seen so far.
Right.
I mean,
we saw him briefly in the previous volume. Like, he's starting to figure out, like, things that are happening in this town do not make sense. So he was ready to question the official story of this guy was responsible for this from the beginning, because he's known something weird's going on for a while now. But yeah, he is definitely very generic detective with the soul patch. That's about, like, if it wasn't for the soul patch, he would be like completely featureless in a lot of ways, because he's just
he'd barely be there.
Yeah. Which is odd, because his art, while simple,
he goes to great lengths to delineate each facial feature structure.
Like, people do, like, there's a lot of, despite being very simple art, it's very, like, the faces are very expressive and unique, and, like, portray personality even with the few lines that he uses. And that detective, you're right, really does it. It's a very just generic face, and it's like eyes and a nose and ears, and then we'll give him this little soul patch thing to give him something that distinguishes him from other bald characters. If I draw another bald character at some point, but like there's not much there.
He draws Malice. The Malice as the priest definitely gets the best facial expressions in this particular arc.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, this whole sequence with him and Zoe that we talked about before is he can't keep the grin off his face about what he's doing and what she's about to do, and like he can't stop smiling this whole time. He's got the biggest, like, this is going exactly the way I want it to. The entire, like, literally every panel, he has this big giant, like, even when he's small, like, he has this big giant grin on his face, like, yep, like, you're gonna kill this guy for me because I want you to. All right. Final thoughts on this volume. Where do you think, how does this fit in terms of these first three volumes that we've discussed? What do you think? Where does this volume kind of fit amongst those in terms of, and even you can even talk about it in the bigger picture. How does this volume fit for you in terms of what do you think about
It would definitely be the most pondering thus far.
it? Yeah.
But I kind of like that. I like the exposition, getting to know the characters a little better. I don't mind dialogue heavy comics at all.
Right.
And I just, the more I see of his art, and I'll tell you this, man, from the moment I saw the way he draws Rachel, she's just perfect.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah. The characters are like, his art is fantastic. Let's not pretend otherwise. And
it's amazing to me. There's so many. I could rattle off about 7 or 8 creators that are really great artists that are also great storytellers. Yeah. And that just doesn't seem right to me, man.
Yeah.
I mean, all right, God, don't throw all of this onto one person.
Unfortunately, some people are super lucky, or fortunately for us, we get to read it. So, I stand by. I think I'm a little, in talking through with you, I'm a little less frustrated with the volume than I was after I read it, but I'm still frustrated with it. I feel like we spent a lot of time dealing with, particularly Jet being dead again. We spent a lot of time with Aunt Johnny in terms of trying to figure out what was going on with them, and like that I feel like really they've had those conversations already, that they're beyond just basic, they're not really alive, they're not really dead, like that there's no real explanation of this other than sort of magic or whatever it is going on, only for that to, I guess, really poorly set up an ending that was freaking the same ending we've gotten to the first 2 volumes. Fly. And so that was frustrating. And I really felt like even the Zoe and the priest stuff, I mean, it's really just him getting his hooks back into her from the outside as opposed to from where he had them before, from the inside. But I felt like I don't know, I just felt like this, it did feel very pondering to me. I mean, to me, the most interesting stuff was the Lilith, Mary Scott, and Hannah stuff in the woods with Death showing up. I felt like that was the part that actually kind of moved some of what was happening, and I felt a lot of this was just fill in some details before we move to really where we're going. And so it's less frustrating, but I'm still kind of frustrated with this volume as a whole. I will be perfectly honest. So
I like Aunt Johnny's skepticism, because it seems like there's always one character in any horror media,
right,
that refuses to believe it until the point where it bites them on the ass.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's believable at this point. It's this series was set a minute ago, but in 2023, it would not take much in real life. If I came home and my wife was laying in bed, pale white, not breathing, apparently dead, with 2 fang marks in her neck, I'm not even going to hesitate. Before I call the cops, I'm driving a stake through her heart and I'm burying her head at a crossroads. That's all it would take to convince me.
Well, yeah, given the way the world's gone the last couple of years, I couldn't really blame you for that. So, all right. Well, I'm still looking forward to reading volume 4. I just really want like a little more progress. I mean, I don't mind like some of the dialogue's really good. I just felt like this was very circular with the last volume, and we kind of end up where we ended up there. I mean, I feel like we end up, other than maybe Johnny and Carol aren't going to be part of the story anymore going forward. I don't know if everybody's going to come back. That kind of defeats Lilith's goal if all the dead rise. But so yeah, I'm very curious. we still don't have an explanation of, and I don't even know if Lilith even has recognized that Jet is alive, that there's a fifth woman. And I'm very curious about where that's going because we haven't gotten an explanation there yet. Because Lilith's story was there was 4 of them. But obviously we know how that Lilith is not a trustworthy narrator. And so we know that for sure. So I am very interested to see how Jet fits into this as the 5th one and whether or not, if others rise, then that really throws everything Lilith said, not even any ounce of truth potentially to what Lilith said. So I'm very curious to see where this goes. But
well, I am certain that your questions about Jet will be answered in the next volume.
Oh, okay.
Because I have read 3 or 4 issues ahead now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully it just picks up the pace just a little bit. We'll see. But I will fully admit, you talked about like your other series you were talking about before we came on there, being the cliffhangers at the end of every volume or every, like, lots of cliffhangers. The problem with this is I don't see these as effective cliffhangers at this point because it's the same cliffhanger every time and we know they're coming back. I guess until we get to the last issue of the series, I'm not going to believe anybody that's dead is dead at this point. Or at least any of the ones we've seen re-rise already. So, yeah, it's like, how effective is it for Earl to come in and find Jet and Rachel dead again when we know that they're not going to be dead? I mean, the series is called Rachel Rising, but so far she hasn't been the only one that rises. So,
and how do you poison a dead person?
Well, and that was the weird thing. That was the other weird thing about that whole sequence was we hadn't even seen them basically since they've come back. They really haven't eaten. They haven't been hungry. And then all of a sudden they're like, I'm hungry. Like, wait, what?
Well, I think their biological processes, and this is obviously magic, are still there, but they're just incredibly slow.
Yeah.
So it's taken them, a good week to work up an appetite.
I guess that's maybe an explanation for it. It was just very odd that suddenly they were hungry when this was about when Carol was out of nowhere going to do, I don't know. That whole sequence was just, I think that more than anything else, I don't think I would have minded the volume nearly as much if that doesn't happen on the last page. I mean, I'm serious. Like, I felt it was slow, but I think my frustration level just went through the roof when that happened again on the last page. Because I didn't think it was well set up, and I didn't think, I was like, oh, we're doing this again? It's kind of what my reaction was. All right. Any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
I'm good.
All right. Well,
let me say this. If any of you are on IG, tomorrow is the final. This cat, Super Demon, has been doing Marvel versus March Madness all month.
Okay.
Yesterday's semifinal was FF versus X-Men. X-Men, of course, won.
Yeah. Today
it was Teen Titans versus Avengers, and I'm fairly certain Avengers is going to win.
Right.
Go find it. The hashtag is Marvel versus March Madness. Go look him up and vote tomorrow in the final. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. The FF's out of it, so I don't really care. But I'm going to pick a side and come down on it.
Okay. Well, I've seen some people post that, but I didn't know what that was. I guess I had missed.
He had a bracket, and he's been doing it all month. It's been pretty cool.
Okay. I guess I just completely missed on that. So there you go. All right. Well, I want to say thanks to Sharon for hanging out with us for a while. Thanks to the Braun page who was hanging out with us earlier. Kenneth Bird, GT Key. Thank you all for hanging out for as long as you did. And with that, we will catch you later. Bye.